Hello there. So, tailoring. Tailoring is something that a lot of players tend to overlook for a number of reasons. Usually, it's because it can be a pain to grind and doesn't seem to provide any immediate benefits. The other is that it's not the most glamorous skill to level. Today, we're going to take a look at this underrated skill and see if it truly is worth your valuable time. So, grab your sewing needles and your mountain of fabric, strip survivor. Join me for your apocalyptic class on tailoring and see why we should give this skill a little more attention. Let us begin. So why is tailoring important? Mainly, tailoring allows you to fortify your favorite clothing pieces and make them stronger. At higher levels, you can even repair them to their full condition. This would be quite useful for long-term survival once the zombie population has reached its peak and it becomes easier to make small mistakes due to overconfidence. One can never be too well protected. But first, we need to know exactly how we can go about leveling the skill to make it worth our while. To begin our tailoring journey, we will need a few key ingredients: a needle and a pair of scissors, the tailoring starter pack. From there, we will need to gather the necessary materials to begin leveling and ultimately fortifying your gear. You can find 3 types of fabrics with varying degrees of damage reduction around the map. The most common ones you'll find are ripped sheets, of which I am sure we are all familiar with, and denim strips, which come from denim clothing. Leather strips are the best of the lot, as they offer significantly more defensive protection, but are rarer to find, as you will need leather clothing. Over time, you will develop a healthy stockpile of these as you go along. As a public service announcement, I would strongly recommend leveling your tailoring through the use of the skill books. Otherwise, this skill will take a long while to level. Without the aid of the skill multiplier, this process is a bit mind-numbing. To gather up the required materials, you can cut up clothing off of zombies. This is where your scissors will come in handy. Given that you will often bump into a few outside of your chosen base, you will soon have a stockpile of ripped sheets, denim strips, and leather. During this process, you will also have a chance to gain thread, which is the other necessary ingredient to begin fortifying your clothes. As your tailoring skill increases, so will your chances of gaining thread from cutting up clothes. To make this process a little bit easier on your fingers, stockpile a bunch of clothes on the floor near your character and queue up the lot to be cut up, so you can save some time clicking and save yourself from a potential carpal tunnel. Once you have a healthy stockpile of these materials, you can begin leveling your tailoring skill with the aid of the skill books. If you have the points to spare during your character creation, taking the sewer trait will help provide a boost to the XP gained. You will also have gained a little bit of XP along the way during the material gathering process. To tailor, simply right-click and inspect your clothes. Here you can see if any pieces of clothing have any holes that can be patched. You can also add padding to any areas that don't have any holes to increase the clothing piece's defensive stats. A good method would be to practice on Z clothing that is damaged during combat, or on a select group of clothing. Save the leather strips you gather for your own clothing later on, rather making use of the ripped sheets and the denim strips for grinding out your XP, as these will be more plentiful. It's a good idea to pick clothing like coveralls or leather jackets with lots of slots to add and remove patches to grind the XP. If you push it, you can level up tailoring within an hour or 2 of your time. But my advice would be to break this up between other activities to avoid burning out and to give your digits a break for a little bit. Bear in mind that initially, adding patches will not necessarily restore the item to full condition. In some cases it will, but this will change as you level the skill though. There are some key points you should know about tailoring. At higher levels of tailoring, specifically level 8, you can completely repair clothing to its full original condition. Not too shabby in my opinion. The defensive modifiers that patches give will increase alongside your tailoring skill. This is why we save our leather strips for when we're at higher levels to provide the maximum protective benefits to our favorite clothing sets. Bear in mind that certain clothing types cannot be repaired, like bulletproof jackets, firefighter clothing, head protection, and shoes. Sorry survivor, I don't make the rules around here. You're going to have to keep a healthy stockpile of these to cycle through as they get damaged. Lastly, tailoring clothing doesn't affect your weight or the insulation levels of the clothing, which is a big positive. Repairing the clothes restores it to the original insulation levels though. While we're on the topic of clothing, let's talk about insulation and protection. The weather system in Project Zomboid is as true to the climate it is based on. Wearing high insulation clothing in summer will, of course, lead to your character overheating. At lower levels, overheating will just increase your thirst rate, which isn't that bad. At higher levels though, you will start to sacrifice attack speed and experience increased fatigue gain. This can be challenging when in extended combat, which I'm sure we've all experienced at some point. To combat this, wearing lighter clothing in summer and thicker clothing or higher insulation clothing in winter is preferable, keeping in tune with the weather conditions. Thicker clothing will generally provide higher levels of defense against zombie damage, along with higher insulation levels. As we discovered before, tailoring at higher levels can increase protection on clothing significantly. This means you can effectively gain very close to 100% protection if you fortify the correct clothing types. This is where tailoring can come in handy, as doing this can help lighter clothing layers, which generally provide lower defensive values, to effectively turn into iron second skins for summer. No more need to run around naked with just your boots on. Okay, so to test if this is actually worth it, we're going to test the base damage chance of clothing that is non-fortified versus a set that is. We'll be using the same sets of clothes in both of these with no traits to modify zombie damage, so we can see firsthand the difference. It's a mix of basic clothing for simplicity, so to manage expectations, don't expect wild amounts of base protection. On average, we're looking at the damage from 3 to 4 zombie bites. For the first test, we will be using basic clothing that has been fully fortified with denim strips at level 1 tailoring. So naturally not that much of a difference. There was a slight reduction to damage, but not too much. But now let's look at the same test when fully fortified at tailoring level 5 with just denim strips. Granted, at the end of the day, it is RNG whether you'll be hit or not. However, the difference is now very noticeable. Only 2 of the zombie hits landed, and this is only at level 5 tailoring with just denim strips. Next, we will test at tailoring level 10 with the same parameters. So, not that much difference here. Fair enough, but we only got damaged by 2 out of all the attacks. Although it does add a significant reduction to damage onto the basic clothing items, it looks like there will be a larger difference on clothing with higher defensive values. Finally, the same test but with leather strips at level 10. So, as we can see from the tests, there is a slight difference. Assuming you are choosing to tailor gear with naturally higher protection, the results would be quite different. If you are a player who is just getting the hang of the game and tends to get caught out often, having fortified clothes can save you in a pinch. In a game where one tiny mistake can mean the end of your run, you would need all the help you can get. While fortifying your clothes early on can be helpful, it really has its place on very long runs, where you would feel the heartbreak when your 1-year survivor takes his last breath because you didn't check that corner. However, it cannot be put above good awareness and Z management. In general, if you are well versed in combat and have your wits about you, you won't get caught out very often. It's a skill that can take a while to level, so if you are keen for the grind, doing so will reward you in the long run. It also serves as another thing to do when you've leveled up the usual skills. So in a way, taking long to level it isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's the kind of skill that as it levels, it will give you greater and greater returns. It's often overlooked by players who tend to focus on the other core skills that would provide immediate benefits, which is understandable. However, if you're looking for a sense of progression, tailoring is there for you. You won't go unrewarded for your efforts. So, based on all of this, yeah, I think tailoring is worth it, especially if you're planning on doing a long playthrough. The benefits it provides at higher levels are tangible enough to actually be worth investing the time to grind it, and can make the difference when you make that one tiny mistake that would ordinarily mean the end of your run. That's it for tailoring. So, what are your thoughts on the tailoring skill? Do you agree or disagree? Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe. If there's anything else you want me to cover, feel free to drop it in the comments below. Good luck out there, survivor, and I'll see you in the next one.